Decades ago, the Republican Party figured out that they don't have to win every election to be powerful. They learned that they could simply pack our court system with Republican hack judges that would serve on the bench for a lifetime. And because Democrats have been too slow to realize how important our courts are, we now have a judiciary that's skewed enormously to the right. Joining me now to talk about the Republican court packing scam is attorney Howard Nations. Howard, our president in the news this week saying that he has to do something about the lower courts and the Supreme Court. He has to do something about the Republican court packing that's taken place over the last few decades. Is it too little too late?
Well, better late than never, Mike, because this is an issue that direly needs to be addressed by this president. The presidential appointments are far more than just that occasional vacancy you get on the United States Supreme Court. There are 874 federal judges, and as vacancies become available in that judiciary, the United States Supreme Court has to give their advice and consent to appointments by the president. Presidential appointments have consequences.
Well, isn't part of the problem, Howard, that there's almost been, I remember Rahm Emanuel coming out and saying during an unbelievable statement during Obama's first term, saying, you know what, progressives really don't care that much about judicial appointments. I mean, really, when he said that, it's a startling statement, because isn't the real problem that a president in a Congress can write all the rules and laws they want, but a court can take them away overnight?
Well, the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court was quoted as saying, you can have all the best players in the world, but if you have the umpires, they're going to win.
And at this point, Howard, what we see is at this point, Clinton, I think, had to fight cloture, had to fight the filibuster one time where he had to ask for a vote on cloture. I think Bush had to do it one time. Obama, I think the numbers are something like 20 times he's had to call for a cloture vote where it comes to actually getting some of these appointees pushed through. And at first blush, you might say, well, that's a Republican problem, but it's not. It has to do with this president's desire to actually be an activist where it comes to appointing some of these judges that are destroying labor, destroying the environment, destroying women's rights, destroying political political process. We're going to see them destroy voting rights here before long. And this president has sat back and acted like this just wasn't important.
Well, Mike, the important point you just made was this. President Clinton, as much as he was at war with the Republican Party for his entire 8 years, particularly his last 4 years, President Clinton had to face cloture only once, because he got in there and he got the United States Senate, he put pressure where it had to be applied, and he got the United States Senate to move on his nominees. This president has not done so.
Howard, talk about, people don't understand, it's not just making Supreme Court appointments. You see, that's what gets the headlines. But the point is, if you make appointments at the lower courts, like the Republicans have completely, you and I always appear in front of judges in the lower courts that have been appointed by Republicans. And you know what? It is always disaster for consumers. So it's not just about the Supreme Court. Talk about what the judge, what the president of this country does as far as judicial inertia, just changing the court system.
Well, even if you and I go to court and we get a fair trial before a trial judge, we still have to take those cases up to the circuit courts. And the President of the United States appoints circuit court judges. He fills vacancies on trial courts, and he appoints the Supreme Court of the United States. The circuit courts, in our jurisdiction, for example, where I am, the Fifth Circuit, if you have a consumer, a plaintiff, an injured party, forget about it on appeal, because you are destined to lose. But you know, there's something else that the President of the United States does with respect to the Supreme Court. Elections have consequences. And imagine the President of the United States also selects the cases that the United States of America will bring before the Supreme Court. And then on those cases that come up in their normal course before the Supreme Court, the President, through the Solicitor General of the United States, can file an amicus curiae brief and put the position of the United States of America before the court, even on cases where they're not directly involved. So it's a powerful, powerful position, and it's one that you have to be actively and very proactively pursuing.
Well, that's what I find so incredible. You have 1/3. This is a startling number. It's actually a little higher than 1/3. But at least 1/3 of all the federal judges that are serving right now have been appointed by George Bush. Now, how scary is that? I mean, if you're a consumer and you're going to court against a corporation, maybe, Exxon, Dow Chemical, any of the big corporations, with this kind of balance in the court, I mean, the chances of a consumer actually winning, and all you have to do is look at the empirical data right now. Consumers lose most of the time with these new political, they're really more Politico appointments than they are judge appointments, but consumers lose. Why can't he, as a constitutional professor, I mean, he taught con law, for God's sakes, why can't he see the importance of making these appointments?
Well, actually, last August, I was in a small group that met with the President, and we discussed this precise issue with him. And his answer was, well, I just simply can't get anything through the United States Senate. And he said, I've been told, don't bother to send anything over. This was August last year. Don't bother to send anything over before the election, because it's not going to be processed. It won't be handled. It will go nowhere. That's the point at which Clinton, who got only one cloture vote, Clinton would push and push and push. This president has not. And the result is that the conservative base is much more energized and aggressive about the court than the progressive base. Rahm Emanuel, who was the right-hand man to the President of the United States for his first couple of years in office, said that we do not hold, we being the progressives, do not hold our elected officials responsible. We don't hold them accountable for they're just not doing anything about getting judges through the Senate.
In other words, it's okay, according to Rahm Emanuel, apparently this president, as far as progressives are concerned, it's okay to have the Republicans pack the court in a way that a woman can't get a fair trial where it comes to her rights on things like fair pay, or we can't get a fair trial where it comes to fixing the environment, or we can't get a fair trial when a corporation makes a product that kills somebody. It's okay with progressives that we don't get a fair trial, because really, when you drill down on it, that's exactly what's at stake here. The best example I can give, Howard, is here you have a president that worked and worked to pass health care reform. Where is it being disassembled? Not at the partially at the Supreme Court, but also at the federal level. The federal appellate courts are disassembling it, aren't they?
They absolutely are disassembling that, but also consider progressive judicial inertia versus the conservative activism. On the conservative side, you've had Citizens United, created completely out of whole cloth by Republican-appointed judges, conservatives. The Civil Rights Act of 1966, Section 5 that you just mentioned, we're revisiting that. Unbelievable, but we're revisiting that at this point because of the extreme activism of the conservative judges. So progressives have got to stop tolerating judicial inertia because it works to our extreme detriment.
Howard, isn't one thing, and I am not very forgiving where it comes to these appointments. First of all, the appointments that Obama is, the ones he's making are coming from corporate America. Yes, they may be minority, they may be women, but they're silk stocking lawyers that work for corporations and have worked for corporations their entire career. Who do you think they're beholden to when a consumer appears in front of them? All they've ever known, all they've ever done is made money by being paid through a corporation. Yes, they may vote liberal on issues like race or other issues like that, but where it comes to really important issues, they are still corporate lawyers. lawyers that have just been moved into those seats. I think where we're left is A, Obama is not going to be able to make any appointments, or B, the appointments that he makes, they're going to be basically corporate toadies, and that's what we're seeing. In a minute, what's your thought about that, Howard?
Well, my thought is this. We pay a lot of attention right now to how many women are on the court, how many African Americans, how many Asians, how many gay, lesbians are being appointed to the court. The one thing that I've heard not mentioned except from you, and we raised this with the president, is how many people are being appointed to the court regardless of those factors, who are truly consumer-oriented judges. We have the white shoe corporate lawyers being appointed, and nobody seems to be concerned about that fact. We raised that with the president in our conversation with him, and he said, well, I can't agree with that because my wife was a white shoe corporate lawyer, and I guarantee you she would be a great judge for the consumer. So I said, okay, that's one. But what about any others? And that's a big issue that we need to move forward in the progressive movement towards getting real people who understand and represent the best interests of the consumer and the individual in America, because those are the people whose rights are being jeopardized and are being taken away by the federal judiciary.
Howard Nation's always out there fighting for the consumers. Honestly, one of the best trial lawyers in this country. Howard, thanks for joining me again. Next week we'll pick up, I think we ought to pick this topic up a little more next week, because it is a topic that is causing huge problems for this democracy.